Today we're looking at parts of speech. So all the different types of words which you can get in English, they fall into one of 8 or sometimes 9 categories. These are, perhaps it's not very clear on this board, I'm sorry about that, nouns, pronouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. I've saved the easiest till last there. We'll look at interjections at the end. But these were actually first described a long time ago in the 2nd century BC by a Greek writer, and he separated Greek words into 8 different parts. I don't think they were exactly the same as these, but very, very similar. So they also thought that grammar was very important back then, and of course it is important. They understood that if we're able to speak to each other, we should be able to do that without any ambiguity, and we ought to be able to do it clearly, so that the other person knows exactly what you're talking about. So this is really the mechanics of a language, and we can use these terms with other languages as well, not just with English. So it will help you with foreign languages if you understand what these words mean, just as much as it will help you with English. Now let's look at nouns first of all. I've tried to show you that each of these categories can be divided into subcategories. So looking first at nouns, nouns are of course things, objects or things, but they don't have to be concrete objects. They could also be abstract objects. Concrete just means physical, you can touch it. Abstract means that it's not physical. So words like, for example, information, communication, emotion, these are abstract nouns. They're all nouns. Information is a noun, communication is a noun. It's still a thing, but it's not something you can touch. So we have abstract nouns and concrete nouns. We also have proper nouns, which are names, so you need to give proper nouns a capital letter. The name of anything is a proper noun, and so it's very specific, a proper noun. But we also have common nouns, and common nouns are ordinary nouns like a box, a room, a sofa, a table, a rug, a floorboard, whatever it is, a board then, they will all be common nouns, and it just means that they refer to things in general. It's not one particular thing, but it's a box. It could be many different things, a box. I've got quite a few different boxes in here. Okay, we can also split nouns into countable nouns and uncountable nouns, and in a dictionary they're usually referred to as mass nouns. If you look at the word in the dictionary and it's a noun, it will tell you immediately if it's countable or a mass noun. Some words, unfortunately, can be countable in some situations and uncountable. They can be mass nouns in other situations, so be careful. Some nouns are sometimes this and sometimes that, but it's very important this, because you need to know if the noun is countable or uncountable in order to use much and many correctly. Much and many are quantifiers, which we'll look at in a little while. So that's nouns. They're all things. That's one type of word which we have in English and in other languages too. We also have pronouns. Now pronouns is a very big category. Pronouns act as substitute for nouns, or they refer to earlier nouns, which are called antecedents. So you call the noun which it's referring to the antecedent of the pronoun. However, there are indefinite pronouns which don't need an antecedent. But let's first look at object and subject pronouns. Subject pronouns in English are like I, he, she, we, they. But object pronouns would be my, him, her, them, us. The object goes after the verb, so I probably should have put it on that side. It would be more logical. But the object goes after the verb in English. We've got subject, verb, object, and the subject pronoun will come at the start. The object pronoun will come at the end. But they both are substituted for nouns. For things, people in this situation, my, him, I, he, but it doesn't have to be a person, it could be an object, in which case it will be it. So that's one type of pronoun, or well, one subcategory of pronouns, object and subject pronouns. We also have indefinite pronouns, which, as I just said, means that they have no antecedent. They don't refer to an earlier noun. These are words like something, anything, somebody, nobody, everybody. They're all indefinite pronouns. Each, both, and neither are also indefinite pronouns. Also, words which end in ever are considered indefinite pronouns. Whatever, whoever, however. Okay, we also have reflexive pronouns, which is when the subject does something to himself. So, I cut myself would be an obvious reflexive pronoun. I did it all myself, or he did it all himself. He built his house himself. That would be a reflexive pronoun. We also have demonstratives. Demonstratives are pronouns where you normally point or show to refer to the noun which you're talking about. So when you say this book, yeah, if you say this book, it means that you're showing it to the listener. So demonstratives usually have a pointing, or you can see it in reality, the noun which they refer to. Same goes for that, these, and those. They're all demonstratives. And by the way, all of these are actually also known as determiners, which I'll come down to in a moment. It's perhaps another category of word. People who study grammar have been arguing for a long time about whether a word falls into one category or another category, and they came up with the category of determiners, which identify or quantify. So these words are actually all determiners as well as being pronouns. Possessive pronouns as well, which is his, hers, mine, its, without an apostrophe. Remember that it with an apostrophe means it is. Its without an apostrophe means the possessive form of it. So that's a possessive pronoun. This is why it's really quite important to study these words, because they will help you not make mistakes. They will help you get things right with your language. Okay, so we have possessive pronouns. We also have relative pronouns, which are who, whom, whose, which, and that. Also, whoever and whichever are considered relative pronouns. What is not a relative pronoun, although sometimes people make a mistake there. And a lot of native speakers will actually use where, when, and why as relative pronouns, but technically they're relative adverbs, and technically we only do this in informal speech. You say something like, that is the restaurant where my friend works, but really you could rephrase that to use a proper relative pronoun, a real relative pronoun, and say, that is the restaurant at which my friend works. So you'd need to put a preposition at, prepositions we're coming on to here, at which instead of where. But I think in informal speech we use them all the time like relative pronouns, and so it's good to be aware of them, certainly. But technically they should be relative adverbs. We'll look at adverbs in a moment. Basically, if you don't know what a word is, you can always call it an adverb, because an adverb can mean a lot of different things. Lastly, pronouns can be quantifiers. Some, any, both, much, many, a few, a little, those kind of words, which tell you how much. And we're going to come on to those again in a second when we do determiners. So remember that pronouns are noun substitutes. They substitute for a noun or refer to a noun in some kind of way. And if you want to know more about the relative pronouns, please brush up on relative clauses. We all need to brush up on relative clauses from time to time, because they're not easy. They're very confusing. And if you look at relative clauses, I've got a video on that, but I'm planning on doing a new one soon. That should clear up what exactly these words, how they function. They usually refer to the noun, the antecedent comes just before the relative pronoun, but not always. Okay, adjectives modify nouns. In English, they usually go before the noun, in which case they're called attributive adjectives. And it's like Yeah, so I've written that wrong for a start. It shouldn't say noun and adjective, it should say adjective and noun. A big house, yeah? A big house, or a happy person, or put that one the wrong way around as well. A happy person, a big house, a long car, whatever it is, you've got the adjective and then the noun. So that's the standard way of using an adjective in English. It's called an attributive adjective. But we don't always have to do that. We could say something like, I'm going somewhere nice. Now here we've got the pronoun somewhere and then the nice, and nice refers to somewhere. It's modifying somewhere. And so here we've got a post-positive adjective. That's the technical word for when you have a noun and then an adjective, which isn't what you usually do in English, but occasionally, because of style or poetry maybe, or for some reason like here, I'm going somewhere nice is standard English, and here we've got the noun and then the adjective. So it is possible to have it the other way round. You can also have predicative adjectives, which is just where you have something like I am happy. Happy is predicative. It's where you have a linking verb like is, well, like the verb to be. There are other linking verbs though. They're known as copular verbs. I think look is a copular verb, be is a copular verb, feel sounds to me like a copular verb. I feel happy, it looks big. Where you can have a linking verb and then an adjective on its own, or the adjective actually refers to the subject of the linking verb. So it's a slightly different way of using adjectives. Also, we have gradable and classifying adjectives, something which I haven't mentioned before, and perhaps I should have, simply because it's very useful for working out if you need a comma when you have a list of adjectives. When you have two adjectives together, sometimes which are modifying a noun, sometimes you use a comma and sometimes you don't. And basically, if you have two gradable adjectives, you need a comma. But if you have a gradable and a classifying adjective, you don't need a comma. And if you have two classifying adjectives, you don't need a comma. But if you have two gradable adjectives, you need a comma between the adjectives. Now, what does gradable mean? Gradable means, like it sounds, it means that you can modify it. You can have big, but you can have bigger. Notice that you can't have Britisher, or even more British. It's maybe used in informal speech, but you definitely can't have more economic or more medieval. Technically, you can't grade these adjectives. You can't have more economic, you can't have more medieval. You can't say this helmet is more medieval than that helmet, but you can definitely say this helmet is bigger than that helmet. So gradable adjectives are comparable. They have you could use the word very with gradable adjectives. You couldn't use the word very with any of these classifying adjectives because they're just absolute. They classify. They don't tell you how big, or they don't quantify in the sense of saying that this is big but this is bigger. They just classify and say this is British, he is American, he is French. They're a way of classifying a noun and not a way of telling you how much concerning the noun. So that's the difference. And if you have two gradable adjectives, please put a comma between them. The way of working that out is by seeing if you can add the word and between them, or to see if you can change the order of them and turn them round. Anyway, let's keep going on to determiners now. Determiners are sometimes pronouns. They used to be thought of as adjectives as well, so it's not exactly clear what they are, a bit of both really. And determiners identify or quantify a noun. So the articles a and the are determiners in English. They tell us whether something is definite or indefinite. Demonstratives, that, this, these, those, are also determiners. Possessives,